We've been chasing a ghost for 10 years. Anyone who played Dragon Nest back in 2010 remembers that feeling. It was a masterclass in action combat. Every hit stop had real weight, and every hitbox collision felt heavy and rewarding. Since then, action MMO fans have been starving. We've been waiting for someone to capture that high-speed, physics-respecting combat again. That makes us easy target for a marketing hype. Enter Dragonsword-Awakening, developed by Hound13, and they are led by CEO Park, the original concept artist and art director for Kingdom Under Fire and classic Dragon Nest. That art style built massive visual hype from day one. We saw the gorgeous Unreal Engine 5 footage and wanted to believe this was the true spiritual successor, but Dragon Nest wasn't a masterpiece because of its concept art. It was loved for its peak action combat, not just how it looked. Visual flair doesn't guarantee the gameplay feel we've been chasing. Behind the pretty wrapper, the reality was much darker. Dragonsword was secretly signed under a publishing contract with Webzen. It was built from the ground up as a generic mobile live service gacha gas grab. It was designed around aggressive microtransactions, stamina systems, and gacha banners built to hook your wallet, not respect your skill. We fall for this developer legacy trap every single time. Hound13 is packed with the eyedentity-games veterans, people who actually built classic Dragon Nest. We saw that team heritage and instantly trusted the company, completely ignoring the corporate scaffolding that actually dictates how the game is going to make us feel. We wanted a skill-based action game. Instead, we were getting another autoplay mobile casino. But then, the corporate scaffolding collapsed. Late in development, Webzen terminated the publishing contract. Hound13 was left stranded, their team shrunk, their funding dried up, and they had a massive unfinished live service mobile carcass. They couldn't afford to host the servers, and they couldn't support a global live service either. Usually, this is where the story ends. A failed mobile project gets thrown in the corporate dumpster and forgotten. But Hound13 chose a different path. They made a pretty desperate, quite fascinating salvage decision here. Director JYJ decided to strip out the live service hooks. They decided to rebuild the game as a premium, buy-to-play offline package for PC. But ripping live service netcode out of a mobile carcass is a massive technical headache. Let's look at how they actually pulled this off. When developer pivots a live service game to an offline single player, they usually have to rewrite the foundation. They have to rebuild the progression systems and rewrite the combat logic so it runs entirely on your local machine. Look, I've seen some salvage jobs, but Hound13 didn't have time or the cash to build a single player engine from the ground up, so they pulled a classic move. They took the essential server-side code and shoved it straight into the client binary. When you put Dragonsword on Steam, your PC is doing all the heavy lifting, the core combat logic, the client data management. It's all running locally on your own machine with zero need for remote connection to some company server. That's a wild shift under the hood. To make it work, they gutted the online server setup entirely, bypassed their own security checks. Then they spent their final month rebuilding the whole gacha balance from the ground up. It was a brute force salvage mission on a brutal timeline, skeleton crew, no time, no budget, but it actually kept the project alive after Webzen killed the publishing contract and left them to die. But it also means the gacha engine is still running under the hood. The physical gates are just pulled down. Take the stamina system. The mobile version relies on currency called light keys to gate your progression. Hound13 didn't delete the code from light keys. They just went into the local database files and removed the limit. Now you have unlimited keys. You can farm resources, dungeons, and bosses indefinitely, and you don't need to pull out credit card to keep on playing. The director JYJ confirmed during the Steam community AMA that this pivot happened incredibly late in development. The developers had to balance offline progression while stripping servers' security checks on a tight schedule. They didn't have the luxury of rebuilding systems, they just bypassed these restrictions. The payoff for players is massive. The entire game is playable 100% offline, and you don't need an internet connection to reach the ending. The main story spans 8 chapters, offering 20 to 30 hours of core gameplay. Every high-tier endgame boss dungeon can be completed solo, and the rewards scale identically whenever you play it alone or in a co-op. But with the mobile gains gone, the focus shifts entirely to the action itself. Let's break down how the combat actually handles. If you're expecting the massive skill bars of classic Dragon Nest, you will be disappointed. Dragonsword abandons that structure. Instead, it inherits the combo design of Hound13's previous game, 100 Soul. You build a team of 3 characters and swap between them in real time to chain attacks, a setup we're all too familiar with from modern gacha games. Each hero carries up to 4 active skills, 2 are standard actives, and 2 are signal triggers. That gives you 12 active skills across your party. The entire combat loop revolves around stacking and chaining status alignments. There are 9 status alignments in total, split into physical and elemental categories. On the physical side, you have stun, down airborne, and break. On the elemental side, you have a burn, chill, poison, shock, and bleed. Success depends on team synergy. You don't do spam attacks. You stack conditions to trigger your signal skills. For example, your Vanguard character Castella uses Heavy Strike to break defense and inflict stun. You instantly swap to Loot to trigger his knockdown signal skill. Then you swap to Area, who throws bombs to stack burn and launch the enemy into the air. Once the enemy is airborne, you swap back to Castella to continue the loop. If Hound 13 preserves the hit stop and boss flinching from 100 soul, this combat loop has serious potential to feel great. But even if the combat plays well, the game still wears its catches scars. You can't see them in the progression design. Base game includes 19 characters. You unlock them through story progression and by earning exploration currency with no character gacha patterns inside. But costumes and familiars are sold strictly as a paid DLC. Selling costumes as a paid DLC at launch is a leftover monetization model. Then there's the Transcendence system. The 6-stage character progression curve remains fully intact. To fully transcend your characters, story missions aren't enough. You're forced to explore the open world to grind materials from mercenary achievements. The world design takes some clear inspiration from Breath of the Wild. You spend hours gathering resources, cooking and solving puzzles just to unlock character powers. The gear system is another leftover gacha design. Dungeons drop equipment and raids drop runes. These are your endgame chase items. The stat values are fixed per role grade, but the actual options are completely randomized. You'll get random main stats and random substats. Hound 13 did add item to lock main stat and reroll substat, make the grind more modern, but the infinite endgame chase is still structured like a mobile progression curve. It's a hybrid system, premium action game wrapped around a mobile skeleton, and the biggest casualty of this pivot is the social sandbox. To keep combat readable and prevent visual chaos, Hound 13 had to make a massive cut to multiplayer. What was originally planned as a shared online world has been scaled down to highly isolated experience. Normal boss dungeons are capped at 2-player maximum, since 3 or more players made the tag combat too chaotic to follow. Raids were originally designed for 8 players groups. They've been scaled down to maximum of 3 players. The open world has 0 co-op support at launch, and the main towns have 0 multiplayer support. There are no leaderboards, no player-to-player item trading, and no text chat during combat. You only get simple text lobby to find players. When you squeeze a game meant to be shared world experience into a single player sleeve, the virtual world feels quiet and the sandbox is empty. But we have to manage our expectations. Don't buy Dragon Sword expecting the next great MMO, and don't buy it expecting the true Dragon Nest 2. Buy it for what it actually is. A highly responsive solo-focused tech action rescue package. It seems to be a game that respects your time by removing paywalls. It's also a massive win for game preservation. If Dragon Sword succeeds on Steam, Hound 13 plans to salvage 100 soul and re-release it as a premium package too. This could set a precedent for how we rescue dying live service games. It's a compromise, but it is an honest one. Thanks for your time. See you in the next one. Back to the grind.